Tamiko, you're a third-generation Japanese American, second-generation Filipina American, and you're also the mother of two. You've gotten academic training in literature and American ethnic studies, and now you write as a freelancer, essays, journalism, public historian as well. And for the past 2 years, you organized the local Day of Remembrance marking the anniversary of the authorization of Japanese American internment in 1942. And as part of that, you led a walking tour of Tacoma's Japantown. You moved here in 2004, but it was 10 years before you even knew there was a Japantown. How did you find out about it?
Okay. I'm just laughing at this little girl who's worrying up there. um, that's me inside. So let's see. It's 2 years. So it's 2014, October actually, and I'm walking up to the corner of Pacific and 17th. It was behind Elemental Pizza, and there's this memorial, and it's a ceremony to dedicate a memorial for the Japanese language school. Which was part of Tacoma. And I had done some research the night before and found out, much to my surprise, that we had a Japantown in Tacoma. It had been 10 years that I'd lived here before I knew that we had anything like this. And so I'm at this ceremony, and I don't know anybody. And I'm walking around, I'm looking around all these people, and before I know it, 200, 300 people start to gather, and a lot of them are Japanese American. And I'm looking at everybody going, where did all these Japanese American people come from? Was everybody hanging out without me? And I think, wow, there was something here, there was a story. And so I looked, when I got the chance then to do some research about Japantown, I took it. My friend Justin, who's here, invited me to look at to write for History Link, which is the Washington State Encyclopedia. And I wanted to do some research about Tacoma's Japantown. And what I found was so stunning to me. Not only did we had barbers, we had loggers, we had unions for the barbers, we had photo shops, we had sweet shops, we had close to 180 businesses owned by Japanese Americans before the war. That number alone, right, was so stunning to me. And so I was filled with all of this exciting knowledge, and Tony Gomez from the Broadway Center invited me and my friend Michael Sullivan, who is a local historian, to do a walking tour of Tacoma's Japantown. Michael's done walking tours before, and I'd never done one before at all. So we started out down at the Whitney, which is the art center now for Tacoma, and we think, it's February, it's cold. If we have 25 people show up, that'll be great. 90 people show up to find out about this history. There are people who had lived in the neighborhood in that former Japantown and never knew. We have some Japanese Americans who grew up in the area, but didn't really know the extent of that Japantown. And so we think, great, 90 people, we'll yell, we'll do our best. And at the end of the tour, we're standing right across the street, actually, from the Pantages, where the tour ends. And Michael turns to me and he says, we should do a Day of Remembrance for Tacoma's Japanese Americans. We should go to Union Station on the days that they left. It was May 17th and 18th, 1942, and we should stand where they stood and feel the impact of that moment. And fresh off the tour, I said, that is a great idea. And a couple of weeks go by, and I'm browsing on my computer, and I see that there's a grant to apply for it with a deadline. And I think this is the perfect thing for a Day of Remembrance grant. It's meant to bring people together. It's all about grassroots. It's about volunteers. And this is the great opportunity to do a Day of Remembrance. The problem was the grant deadline was about 24 hours away. So I think, okay, well, all right, there are doubts, right? There's time, surely, right? May is, about 8 weeks away. This could be a city event. Do we have time? That's one thing. Do I have time is another thing. I have two wonderful, beautiful school-age girls who I want to be there for and parent. I have a fantastic partner. I'm a freelance writer, so I'm usually juggling multiple projects at once. There's time. And with all that, there's energy, right? Do I have the energy to do this in this much time? There are things like, well, money. Not that I want to be paid for this. I didn't think I would be getting paid for it. But money, like we need to rent space. We would need to find, publicity. We would need to find speakers or performers. This could be hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars. I had no idea if I could find enough of that. And then there were things like ethics, like, is this really my story that I should be retelling or honoring? I am Japanese American. I have lived in Tacoma. At that point, I'd lived there for about 10 years, 14 years, and I thought, well, okay, my family was sent to Tule Lake, California during World War II. They actually might have brushed up against the Tacoma Japanese Americans who were also sent to Tule Lake. And I think, well, I don't know if this is really my story. I'm not historically from Tacoma. And I did some research and I thought, oh, they did have one day of remembrance, but it was back in 1990 something, 98, and they've never had one since. They had never had one before. So is this my story that I should be working on and honoring? And so 10 minutes go by. And I start to think, and I start to type. I'm a writer, and you know what? I will just type. I'll draft this. I'll just see what the day could look like. I'll just make this up, just shape it for the day. I don't have to send it in, right? I'll just type. And as I'm typing, I am thinking of several women who have made an impact on me. The first one is my mother, who was always about helping people wherever there was a need. She took people in. If there was someone who needed something on the street, she would give it to them. She was all about giving, and she, I think, has always encouraged me to tell these stories and to step in where I thought there was a need. The second woman was actually a therapist that I worked with. She was Japanese American and third generation like me. And I was working with her on the Japanese American Citizens League in Berkeley after I'd graduated from college. So I had done this honors thesis for my English degree, and it was all about, well, third generation Japanese American women. And I was proud of this work. I thought, this is about silence, and it's about memory, and it's about the camp experience. It's all about these things that people, I believe, should know and learn about. And I was telling this therapist about the thesis, and she said, oh, I would love to see a copy. Could you send it to me? And so I brought her a copy. And we met again a month later, and I said, so what did you think of that? And she said, well, it was really well written. You did a good job. But you talked a lot about the role of the individual in healing. And these are important experiences. These are important issues that you are raising. She said, but I wonder about the role of the community in healing. What is the role of the community in healing? And she said, I have experienced some of the most important healing in community. And I wondered where that was in your work. So that gave me some pause. And I thought about that and have thought about it off and on for years. The third woman who I was thinking as I was typing this grant, which was due in less than 24 hours, was one of my aunties. She was one of my dad's younger sisters, so she was also sent to Tule Lake. And when I graduated high school, she took me aside. I don't think she wanted anybody else to know what she was giving me. So she took me aside into this back room, and she pulls out this envelope that has a card and a check in it. And I pulled it out, and I looked at the card, and I looked at the check, and it was a very generous check. I was so moved, and I looked at her, and I said, "Thank you." And she just looked back at me and said, "I've been saving." And later I would come to know that that was an act of what in Japanese is called okage-sama de, which means thanks to you, I am well. Thanks to you, I am well. And so I'm looking at the grant application, and I hit send. Who knows, right? I might get it, I might not get it. And I start to call Michael, whose name I put on the application, and said, what about that day of remembrance that you said? And he said, maybe we can make this work. And he started to call in favors. I started to talk to people. And though we didn't get the grant, we were still able to hold that first day of remembrance 2 years ago. But thank you. But I want to fast forward just a little to this year's Day of Remembrance, because that is the scene that holds the moment of what I want to really share with you today. At the second Day of Remembrance, we were able to hold it at the Washington State History Museum. There's a huge open rotunda in the lobby. There are balconies along that rotunda. And we had several hundred people, I think, throughout the day show up to be there. There was a moment during that whole day where we had taiko players who were playing. They were also playing at that memorial dedication ceremony that I'd been at a few years ago. But they were there. Wendy Hamai, who is the board president, was there and playing, but also speaking to us about the joy that comes from playing taiko and the joy that comes from having the ancestors and the power of resilience and what it is for a community to come back from hardship and adversity during the war. And above us, right, there was a display of 1,000 cranes that had been folded by Japanese Americans around Washington State. Wendy was talking to us, and she is the one who keeps telling me, Tamiko, we're still here. We're still here. We're still the one, Japantown disappeared, but we're still here. So there's this group, right, of taiko players playing. There are little kids in their kimonos down at the front, and they're dancing around. In the balconies, people have pulled their chairs up close to see the taiko performance. There's a grand staircase. People have lined that staircase and filled that staircase. And taiko playing, if you've ever experienced it, is really loud, right? You can feel it right here in your chest as you're playing it. And this particular moment was when I understood about the power of giving back to a community. It's not necessarily about duty or obligation. Those are actually very strange and somber words in American culture. This was about the joy of knowing that you are being carried by a community. And the joy of giving back is life-giving. Thank you.
I have a couple of little, Bev, the reason that I could type those press statements, court briefs, and grants, and do the budgets for the contracts is because my guidance counselor told me I wasn't college material, so I better take bookkeeping and typing. Yay! Got to use it. And my friend Nobi Takahashi and I were walking across the fairgrounds, and I told her we're matrilineal societies. When the silvers come up the river, all of the boys, the men who are from our tribe, married out, and they would come back to help harvest and put up the silvers, and we'd have pony races and bone games and foot races and weddings and all kinds of giveaways and memorials. And then we invited a few white people, and they come, and now we pay to get in. It's called the Puyallup Fair. and Nobu Takahashi. Now see, in an earlier discussion, you know, I said I thought my family were the only Indians because John Wayne movies, they were always killing all of the Indians, and we didn't know no other Indians. And so Nobi said in the internment camp, the only movies they were allowed to watch was John Wayne killing Japs. And so we'd had that conversation earlier. Nobi pointed at a barn out there on the Puyallup Fairgrounds and said her entire extended family lived in one stall while they were building the internment camps until their family got moved. So Nobi always could do me one better. So love your stories, both of you.
Thank you, Ramona. Thank you, Tamiko.